Hi, welcome back to White Fox Vintage Snowmobile. I'm Al Pinckney. This is going to be part 4 of the W project, where we are building a vintage ice racing snowmobile. Part 3 didn't work out that well. The editing was not done properly. I sort of saved it in the wrong format, but I published it anyway, so hope it wasn't too notchy. This video will be mostly the suspension. Basically disassembly, cleaning and greasing, put it back together. Had some snags in the project, and a little bit of a modification just to lower it. So hope you enjoy. If you stick around after, you'll see a few bloopers. I've got quite an archive of bloopers starting to accumulate. So thanks for checking in, and I hope you can help me through my struggle here. Here's our replacement unit, and now that I look at this, I wonder if it wouldn't be a better skid to use, period. Much better shape, much less rust. Probably just as seized up. Very tempting. Of course it needs wheels, back axle. Let's see what we can do with this. Nasty. Another seized cross shaft? You're kidding. Not too bad. Well, we're carrying on with our project and having little difficulties suspension-wise at this point. I'll show you what we're up to. We abandoned the Rusty Monster suspension because the donor here is actually in better shape. So we started to strip it down to grease the bolts, grease the cross shafts, work on a limiter strap for the rear skid and rear scissors and so forth. It'll need end caps, and the Hyfax is in good shape. So we thought we'd use that and save a penny. But the showstopper comes here, and there's our dilemma. The center pivot bolts for the front torque arm they're pretty much slopped right out. Those bolts were loose as the driver trail rode it or beat it up, whatever he did, and didn't realize they were loose. I'm sure anybody would tighten that if they had known. Anyway, so either we get that aluminum welded and re-drilled, or we find a different set of rails, which I probably have another set in the back, so we'll look into that and see if we can carry on. Now, something we try to do, I'm putting the skid back together, and something we try to do is clean up every shaft These are old and corroded. These happen to be aluminum inside. So I just tap the threads out, oil them, tap them out, make sure things thread up nice, better than new, hopefully. So we just throw in some oil and run the tap in and out of the threads. Like they're all damaged to some extent from being 30-some odd years old. This is a normal 3/8 thread, 16 thread per inch. Pretty easy to deal with. After that part's done, I just blow a little air in, and there's bound to be some filings in there. Hopefully as good as new. And it's straight. I ran it on the bench grinder, the buffing wheel a little bit, so it's cleaned up quite nicely. The donor skid came with the nice Polaris OEM bolts. I don't know, they buy them in the States somewhere by the gazillions. And I find they corrode a lot less. They seize up a lot less. And they're a lot easier to start. Before we put them together, we always buff the rust off and put a little grease on, or anti-seize compound. Good as new. Just a little bulk grease on the threads. In 35 years, when the next backwoods mechanic takes it apart, he'll say, "Hey, thanks very much. I wish Polaris had done that." I'm leaving everything loose so that when we torque the skid, we make sure it goes together square. I have got myself in trouble tightening the bolts, and the skid tends to tweak a little bit, and therefore you don't have good alignment. If I had all the time in the world and patience, I would paint all these components, but I'm more of a functional type guy than full restoration. I don't really spend a lot of time. I'd rather see them go than look at them. We'll shorten the limiter strap right up while it's out. I may put an adjustable limiter strap on this sled at a later date, just for adjustability at the racetrack, but for this go around we're just going to make it easy. Now, speaking of lubrication, anti-seize issues, the rear tensioner bolts, mostly on Polaris, but all sleds, I've had these seized up because it's metal in aluminum tube quite often, and you often have to pull the skid and drill those out and put on new mounts, etc. So I always try to take good care of these. Lots of anti-seize or grease, and like I say, the next guy 30 years down the line will love you for it. Right, well, we've had the camera off for a little while, but you'll see that we've made some progress. So far it's just a rebuild, cleaning, straightening, and we have new sliders on there. They ended up being a little short, but that's all right. We spaced out our 3 rear idlers. That one there should run right in the track of the drive lugs so that it'll prevent derailing. Both slides, I put this slide Hyfax on backwards so that it rides up against the drive lugs for when you're cornering. It should give us a little more support. Now we're going to take this front cross shaft out and lube it up and make sure it's straight, and then looking at the problem with this is basically a TXL suspension or a Centurion suspension. There's a type for it if you looked in the Polaris manual, type 6 or something like that. But they are a longer travel suspension, which is really not what we're looking for in the oval race scene. We're looking for something, again, to lower the center of gravity. So I'm looked at my narcotics agent buddy's sled, and he has a adjustable limiter strap on the front. I'm not sure I'm going that way this time. I think I'm going to put another shaft across here and just boom a short limiter down. Once these things are adjusted and the sled's cornering all right, we don't have to tweak a whole bunch, I guess depending on ice conditions. And then we'll do something similar on the back. Different ways of lowering that back scissor, but I think we'll do a limiter strap there as well. And then we're done with the skid for now. We'll drill it for the slide lube ports through the rails, through the slides, and we might as well plumb that, get it ready. And sort of waiting on the chassis to come back from the welding shop, and we can start looking at studs on the track, and there's lots of work to do. That shaft is essentially stuck in there. When in doubt, get a bigger hammer. It's a steel one, probably won't ever get bent. So we will wash it down, and I'll decide whether we use this or go find an aluminum one. Probably for what we're doing, I don't think there'll be a whole bunch of stress on the front scissor because the suspension will be sucked up into in the front. So I would lean toward aluminum just for the weight savings, but hopefully we have one. So we're off to the storage bin, and we found a nice aluminum shaft, and I think it's relatively straight. Polished it up, and we cleaned out our thread holes again. I've always had trouble drilling these rails dead center in between the channel. You can't get a tape measure in there to measure them or anything. So 1 or 2 jobs back, I found I think it's a 7/16 nut. It's slightly smaller than I'd like it. It could be a little bigger, but it fits between that channel perfectly. And then I went to Princess Auto or Harbor Freight from all my friends in the United States and bought a set of transfer punches which fit right in there. And it is, that way we're guaranteed to get our shaft in there, or the head of the bolt. So there. That's, I don't know. I'm a backyards mechanic, but I try to get it right once in a while. So, there. Now we'll install our limiter straps. And I think we're approaching the end of the suspension part of this build. Oh, I got a little work to do here. I have a better tube for the back of this skid. size this up to see how it's going to work. So on closer examination, I believe I will turn this strap over. I think the loose part of the strap will vibrate against the drive legs, causing the race driver to have undue stress. For now, we'll go to the second hole. And only testing on the track will tell us if that's going to work. Retries for $1. I'll give Polaris credit, I always do, but for ease of inventory and manufacturing, this limiter strap is 1980 vintage. This limiter strap is out of a 1996 Indy 500 EFI sled, and it's the same part. The cross shafts are the same part numbers, or the same part, probably different part number, but it's the same stuff. The wheels are the same. It's just once Polaris had the formula figured out, and they figured it out early, they kept it. And for the backyard mechanic or a restoration guy like me, it makes life a lot easier. So thank you. There, I'm happy about that. Now this part of the project's almost complete until we can get it in the chassis and see how things line up. It would not surprise me if we have to come back in here and do a considerable amount of fine tuning. But from what I know, looking at the narcotics agent sled and how his is set up, this is the same deal. So. It's amazing how fast a drill can walk away. As John Mills says, double boost on the YouTube, long stringy bastard. Hi, I'm Al Pinkney. Welcome back to White Fox Vintage Snowmobile. This will be part 4 of the W project, where we're constructing. There's the phone.